A lot of hope because the 33 babies that we have in this ward today would have had no chance a few years ago.
This week on Christian World News, it's a place where doctors are in short supply and gardeners are being trained to be surgeons. But despite the obstacles, lives are being saved.
Plus, as thousands march to end abortion in America, this woman remembers the horror of her own forced abortion. See how she's using her trauma to help save lives.
And building a kingdom with computer code, how these tech-savvy entrepreneurs are bringing in a harvest.
여러분 안녕하십니까? 크리스천 월드뉴스입니다. 지난 1996년 의료 선교를 위해 가족들을 데리고 아프리카 오지로 떠났던 한 의사가 있습니다. 현재 20년이 넘도록 가난하고 연약한 자들을 섬기는 데 헌신하고 있는 레이니어 터하르 박사인데요. 아프리카 말라위 인근 오지의 열악한 상황 속에서 많은 이들의 생명을 구하고 희망을 전하고 있다고 합니다. 오늘의 첫 소식으로 함께 만나보시죠.
Dr. Rainier Tahar's commute to work takes just a few minutes.
Sometimes at night, when they call me for an emergency, it goes a bit faster.
Sure.
Sometimes on the bicycle.
Yeah. Dr. Tahar started as the medical director of Nkoma Hospital in Malawi in 1996.
So I've worked in the West, I've worked in Canada and in South Africa and in England, but I think what I do here makes the biggest difference.
As medical director, Tahar hired Dr. Catherine Hodge to solve a problem.
The hospital approached me and asked me to consider opening a neonatal unit because they recognized that it was just a missing piece of the hospital care.
They do what they can with the little they have. Babies sleep 5 or more to a bed. The smallest sleep in makeshift incubators.
We designed this box, which just has warming light bulbs underneath, and since then I don't think we've ever had a hypothermic death.
Yes, even during an African summer, underweight babies die of hypothermia. Hodge was obviously the perfect person for this 2-year journey, but she had to go through an emotional learning curve along the way.
A lot of grief because in the States I had never seen a child die, even once. And then with time was able to move to this new role of setting up a really heartbreaking unit, but one where there's also a lot of hope because the 33 babies that we have in this ward today would have had no chance a few years ago, most of them. Yeah.
To understand the magnitude of the healthcare crisis here on the African continent, you just need to look at the doctor-patient ratio. For example, in the United States, there are about 400 patients to 1 doctor. Here in Malawi, get this, there are 50,000 patients to 1 single doctor. The focus at this teaching hospital is bringing up national doctors. Daniel Chimutu started out as Dr. Tahar's gardener.
My dream is to become an orthopedic surgeon.
They're also currently training 300 nurses at Nkoma. Olive Simbani finished nursing school a while ago. She's been at Nkoma for more than 30 years.
You know, when you've got a child who is very sick at the beginning, and then in 2-3 days' time, you find that child smiling at you, coming to you, you know, that you feel good that you have done something nice.
As you can imagine, living in a rural community like this can be difficult, both at work and at home.
The electricity is probably the most common challenge we have. Also, the water needs to be pumped from a river 5 kilometers from Nkoma.
So one of the many goals at the hospital is to keep the people they train to stay in that rural, often frustrating setting.
We hope that it's their Christian conviction that brings them here and makes them stay. We also try to give them a decent housing.
Plans are currently underway to build a number of small apartments to offer more staff low-cost housing.
You know, nursing is a passion, so if people have got that passion to work and looking at how poor people here are, you can stay and you can still go on. So I feel this place is ideal for a Malawian woman.
And it's ideal for doctors like Tahar, not for the salary or the luxury or the amenities, but for the necessity.
The next town is 50 kilometers from here. In an emergency situation, that could be the difference between life and death.
국가생존권위원회에 따르면 1973년 이래 미국에서 시행된 낙태 건수는 6천만 건이 넘는다고 합니다. 미국 대법원이 낙태를 합법화한 지 45년이 지났지만 낙태에 반대하는 이들은 여전히 목소리를 모으고 있습니다.
The annual March for Life brought tens of thousands of protesters to Washington, D.C. January 19th. The theme, Love Saves Lives. Before the event, President Donald Trump addressed pro-life supporters at the White House.
The March for Life is a movement born out of love. You love your families, you love your neighbors, you love our nation, and you love every child, born and unborn, because you believe that every life is sacred, that every child is a precious gift from God.
10대 때 아이를 갖고 혼자 남겨진 한 여자가 있었습니다. 이 여자는 낙태만이 유일한 해결책이라고 믿고 수술대에 올랐는데요. 하지만 끔찍한 경험으로 고통을 받다 현재는 생명을 위한 미국인 연합에서 낙태 반대를 외치고 있습니다. 그녀의 이야기를 함께 만나보시죠.
Catherine Glenn Foster is a wife and mom who also leads Americans United for Life, one of the premier organizations fighting abortion.
Babies are saved. Millions of babies have been saved by our work.
For her, this isn't political, it's personal. Because Catherine herself suffered an horrific experience at an abortion clinic almost 2 decades ago.
When I was 19 years old, I had an unintended pregnancy. I felt incredibly alone. I thought it really was, it was just me trying to figure out what to do and salvage my life.
The theme for this year's March for Life on January 19th is Love Saves Lives. Maybe someone to really love and stand with Catherine could have saved her from what happened next, but no such person came alongside her.
So I went online, found the second cheapest abortion center I could, made an appointment for that Saturday because I knew that I couldn't wait any longer. I wouldn't have had it in me. I was already bonding.
She certainly didn't feel like a liberated woman exercising her reproductive freedom, making a pro-choice decision.
Went into that center because I thought I had no choice. I thought I had no other option, and I was terrified. What I found there was coercion, lack of information, at times outright lies, at times force.
As the abortion was about to begin,
I asked to get up. I said, please let me up, let me off this table, out of this room. I don't want this anymore.
Foster first described the shocking experience that followed to CBN News a year ago at a protest outside a Planned Parenthood building.
And I said, no, I can't do this. You know, this is wrong. I feel really bad about this. Let me just go. You can keep the money. And they shouted for more people, and I had 4 people holding me down. One, a nurse, a staff member on each arm. The doctor aborted my child. I'm screaming. You know, that's not choice. It was not pro-woman. It was not pro-me. They didn't listen to me. They did not care about me. They didn't respect my opinion. They were just in and out. They wanted me gone, and they wanted my baby gone.
Now in the present, Catherine still can feel the grief and guilt of that day so many years ago.
In the end, I was left alone in the recovery room, wishing that I could turn back time and just go in an hour, a week, a month back in time and redo everything. It took me a long time to recover, physically and then mentally, emotionally, spiritually. It was devastating.
But Catherine pushed on, finished college, then law school. She wed, had kids, and because of what happened to her at that clinic, she took up pro-life legal work and eventually the presidency of Americans United for Life.
Where we work in the legislatures, in the courts, in the culture, to make sure that other women don't have to go through what I went through.
She's particularly proud of one state law championed by her group.
The state of Wyoming, just last session, passed its first pro-life law in 28 years. And that law is an ultrasound requirement.
Meaning if an abortion center records an ultrasound with a patient and she asks to see it, they must show her the baby's image, which didn't happen for 19-year-old Catherine.
That's part of my story, because I was there in the center and asked to see my child's ultrasound. And I asked, and I was refused. Wow. They said no. And that's always haunted me. I've always wanted and wished again that I could go back. And knowing that women in Wyoming now have that right is so impactful.
Paul Strand, CBN News, Washington.
세계적인 부흥사로 잘 알려진 루이스 팔라우 목사가 폐암 4기 판정을 받았다고 합니다.
Palau shared the news in a video on his webpage with his sons by his side. He says instead of fearing death, he's cherishing each day and looks forward to the day he will finally get to see God face to face. Palau says he has peace that surpasses all understanding. The family asks that people continue praying for his full recovery.
스케이트보드가 중국의 밀레니얼 세대에게 인기를 얻고 있다고 합니다. 얼마 전 영국에서는 청년들에게 스케이트보드를 가르쳐주기 위해 중국을 찾은 한 남자가 있었는데요. 하지만 단순히 스케이트보드만을 가르치는 것은 아니라고 합니다. 함께 만나보시죠.
Skateboarding is the hottest trend in China. In many Chinese cities, millennials get together on weekends to practice and perform skateboarding dance. It has drawn attention from an overseas expert too. James Tyson was born and raised in the United Kingdom. From a young age, he was passionate about skateboarding. It gave him identity and purpose in life.
While I was young, I didn't want to do anything except skateboarding. I wanted to get better. Even though I was in school, I couldn't concentrate on my studies. My mind was full of skateboarding. I felt the same sense of freedom and open expression.
Born into a Christian family, James found skateboarding was more satisfying than religion.
The temptations were around me. I tried to leave after a while, but the next day, I couldn't resist the peer pressure. I was part of the group. We were the cool people.
Although James experienced some challenges, he believed he could use the sport to escape all his problems. However, he did not realize he needed in his life more than just skateboarding.
I was injured so bad from one accident. My back pain was unbearable. I started to feel lonely and hopeless. I thought my life was a joke.
In the midst of his misery, a friend came to visit James and shared how God had called her to overseas mission work. James was deeply touched and decided to quit all his bad habits. He packed up his belongings and decided to do the same. James moved to Nanning, where he's now lived for more than 13 years. James and his family started a skateboard ministry. And with other Christians, he teaches young Chinese how to win the skateboarding contests. More importantly, they bring the Chinese youth to Christ.
I love these Chinese youths. They are very talented. I want to train them to become better. And I don't want them to repeat the mistakes that I made in my life. Only God could provide the true freedom.
James' best friend, Super Joe, came to Christ through the ministry. He now designs skateboards with biblical images.
After witnessing James' godly behavior, I knew God could change me too. I accepted Jesus to protect me from evil. We need to live with purity and true freedom.
More people have joined James and his team. Most of them are Chinese millennials. Joe and James are the leaders of their Bible study. Over the years, they have baptized several young Chinese.
Skateboarding will be the next hottest game among the young people from around the world. I would like to invite more people to join us. My team and I could sharpen their skills. More importantly, they need to know following God is the coolest thing we can all do in life.
Mengfei Li, CBN News.
캄보디아의 작은 마을에는 한 영어 학교가 있는데요. 이곳에는 스포츠로 또 영어로 복음을 전하고 있다고 합니다. 캄보디아로 가보시죠.
In Cambodia, it's actually illegal to go up to someone on the street and tell them about Jesus or hand them a tract. It's considered disturbing the peace, and you could even be arrested. This month, my team is working with a man who's using teaching English to get around that.
I like English.
Less than 2% of Cambodians consider themselves Christians. Sakeng Kat says he's one of those few thanks to a missionary to his village when he was young.
At the end of the worship, he asked me like, do you want to believe in Jesus? I say yes.
Now in Cambodia, many forms of evangelism are actually illegal. When Kat heard God calling his family to the ministry, he wasn't sure how to get started.
I was praying and then God shows that we can start with the English teaching.
Yes, that's right. Number 6, S-I-X.
The Good Seed Private School partners with the few existing churches in the country to teach children in the community English.
I'm teaching from this book here. It's English lessons from the book of Mark. So these young ladies are not Christians, but I get to share the gospel with them through this book.
A school that started out with just a few students in a tiny room is now this 2-story building with over 100 students.
My life is for Jesus, to serve him. So whatever he called me to do, I will do it. Yes. Yes.
Now right now my ABC. Next time won't you sing with me?
Good job! The school has begun construction on a new outdoor playground and hopes to one day have a full English library for their students. In Kampong Tom, Miranda Lee, CBN News.
구글과 애플, 페이스북 등 실리콘밸리는 첨단 기술 연구단지로 잘 알려져 있는데요. 이곳에는 복음을 위해 자신들이 가진 재능을 사용하는 사람들도 있다고 합니다.
Silicon Valley is home to some of the most brilliant minds in technology and innovation. Their skills are put to work at places like Apple, Google, and Facebook. A win for their companies, but a loss for the church. As a minister at Menlo Park Presbyterian, Kevin Kim watched Bay Area churches miss countless opportunities to learn from those filling their pews.
Within the 3,000 people that are sitting in our pews, there's so much human capital. There's so much potential. We have leaders in politics, leaders in government, leaders in medicine, leaders in technology, leaders in finance. The church needs to be more creative, needs to be more disruptive. I mean, God deserves the best of our imagination.
Out of that way of thinking came Code for the Kingdom, a modern-day idea session or hackathon. Kevin's friend Neil Alston, a Google business development manager, helped him get it started.
A hackathon is one of the most common events here, and the idea is you get together for a weekend and you solve a problem, and you solve it by hacking, which means not creating something that's awesome and permanent, but it answers a question.
Our first one, we brought in 250 of our friends who were designers and developers at these major tech companies. Friday night, you come in, you meet everybody, and then you pose these big innovation challenges in front of them. So you say, here's the orphan problem in the world, and here's global poverty, and here's anti-human trafficking, and here's evangelism. What ideas, what platforms, what technology would you create to move the dial on this? The ideas and the product that they came up with, they were pretty amazing. In fact, so much so that this leader of a major Christian tech company who happened to be there wanted to check it out. He said, your guys, what you guys did in a weekend, my guys couldn't do in 6 months.
Kevin, Neil, and their friends hosted these events for 5 more years. During that time, they came up with thousands of ideas, but noticed they were beginning to lose momentum because of a disconnect in getting those ideas to market.
It's really hard to sustain the kind of projects that are going to make a difference and an impact, and that's something that both Kevin and I have worked very hard at, is making sure that it continues to live on.
Neil did that by going out on his own and launching the faith-based tech company called Carpenter's Code. Carpenter's Code developed a prayer app called Abide.
Abide gives you guided audio meditations, and they vary from 2 minutes to about 15 minutes. They're all focused back on Scripture. So we take a verse in the Bible and a topic around that, and then really just take you through a process of reflection.
Meanwhile, Kevin Kim took what he had learned and started his own company focused on missional tech work. It's called Basil Technologies.
The idea is that God would fill us as technologists, developers, and designers with his Holy Spirit to do his work. And so our focus was product development.
Every Monday night, a group of Christian volunteers from some of the top tech companies in Silicon Valley come together to talk about some of the problems that Christian organizations are having. They then harness their combined innovation, creativity, and expertise to figure out not only the solution to the problem, but how to implement it. One of Basil's current projects is a partnership with the International Justice Mission.
We had IGM come in and we did a brainstorm with them, which was led by one of our team members who's an expert in design thinking. And so in this brainstorm session, we discovered from International Justice Mission that these perpetrators of human trafficking were using technologies for their evil purposes. And so a lot of our people who work in tech, they were like, man, that can't happen, and so we want to do something about it.
The team hopes that by making major tech companies aware, they can come up with effective solutions together. At only about a year old, Basil has plans to eventually expand. For now, however, they plan to fine-tune their process and slowly spread the word by putting some of tech's best and brightest to work for the kingdom. Caitlin Burke, CBN News, San Francisco, California.
CBN 오퍼레이션 블레싱 팀이 파키스탄의 한 교회에서 테러를 당한 이들을 돕고 있습니다.
In December, Muslim extremists attacked a church in Quetta, killing 9 people and wounding dozens of others. Operation Blessing partnered with a local group to provide food boxes for the families of the victims to help them get through their time of grieving.
크리스찬 월드뉴스, 오늘 준비한 소식은 여기까지입니다. 저는 다음 주에 다시 인사드리겠습니다. 시청해주신 여러분 고맙습니다.